Welcome to the Word on Wednesday. This is your midweek online Bible study and devotion at Macville Christian Church. Today's Wednesday, October the 8th, 2025. Washington County schools are on fall break this week. Many other school systems are as well. We have many families from Macville who are traveling this week, many more so than normal. And I'm glad that you're able to take advantage of these times together, and I hope you're having a good time while you're traveling and taking this time together as your family. Now, if you're watching this from another county in central Kentucky, chances are you're on fall break as well. Christian Academy of Lawrenceburg, where Stephanie and I both teach, is on break. We elected to stay home. We had a lot of things to do, and we're catching up on some things around the house. And, of course, just getting refreshed a little bit. And it's good, to be refreshed in your faith. I've often found several different ways to do that. Usually the ways I do that are a little shorter than the duration of a week. But it's the same idea. 2 weeks ago, Stephanie and I spent 2 days in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, at the National Quartet Convention, which was a gathering of artists in the Southern gospel music genre. And we got a couple of days of listening to great music, but also catching up with some friends that we've made through that. And it was just a good time to get away and get refreshed and recharged. There are times that we'll take day trips to just enjoy being together, enjoy God's creation. We're big fans. Both of us are big fans of listening to great Christian teachers expound on God's Word, because I find that I learn something new every time. Some of you like to do things like that. Some of you like retreats or events along that line. Whatever your preference is, make sure that you take time to be recharged and refreshed. And sometimes it's just a matter of being reminded of a very important teaching of God's Word. Recently, when Stephanie and I were at the National Quartet Convention, we were talking to a friend that we've known for probably close to 10 years. And he was talking about some major misfortune in the life of his group. Yet through the entire time he was talking, the fact that he was trusting God was never said, but you knew it. You knew it by the way he was talking. He was trusting God through the entire ordeal. And it's a lesson I have to totally remind myself about many times. And it's a lesson that the Bible makes very clear in Luke chapter 8, verses 22 through 25. Let's read those together. One day, talking about Jesus, he got in a boat with his disciples, and he said to them, "Let's go across to the other side of the lake." So they set out, and as they sailed, he fell asleep. And a windstorm came down on the lake, and they were filling with water and were in danger. And they went and woke him, saying, "Master, Master, we are perishing." And he awoke and rebuked the wind and the raging waves, and they ceased, and there was a calm. And he said to them, "Where is your faith?" And they were afraid. And they marveled, saying to one another, "Who then is this, that he commands even winds and water, and they obey him?" This story has always intrigued me. It's one that I read from Luke 8, but it's also found in Matthew 8 and Mark 4. And it's a story of how the wind and the waves just obeyed Jesus. Wow. Sometimes it's hard to put your mind around that. but it's a story that's so pertinent to us. You know, right now we're in the hurricane season. Now in Kentucky, we're kind of fortunate that we rarely experience major effects from the hurricane. But you know, last year, some areas of eastern Kentucky were affected by the remnants of Hurricane Helene. And that was the storm that killed over 100 people in western North Carolina. If you remember, the hurricane came up through the Gulf of Mexico and then went through Florida and Georgia and South Carolina, much further inland than normal. And in 2008, the remnants of Hurricane Ike were strong enough that when they hit the Louisville area, over 300,000 people were without power for several days, close to a week. Stephanie and I were living in Shelbyville at the time, and I don't recall if we lost power at any time, but I was just amazed at the destruction that was in our neighborhood. The one thing that I remember vividly about that storm was it hit our area on a Sunday morning, and we were at church at Shelby Christian Church, and it hit while we were inside, and when we opened the door to walk out to our car to go home, we nearly blew you down. It was that strong. And I'll tell you, I've never lived through a hurricane per se. I lived close to them when I lived in North Carolina, but the few times that it came close, I was evacuated and was not affected. But that kind of wind just was really unnerving. And I wonder what the feelings were. What the crew on that boat Jesus was in were thinking. And they were experiencing this vicious storm of wind, the water coming into the boat. It looked like it was going to sink. And they said, "Don't you care that we're going to die?" And Jesus was sound asleep. According to Luke, he rebuked the storm and things immediately got still again. In Matthew, we're told that he said, "Peace, be still," and there was calm. But I just wonder what these men thought. Jesus asked them why they were fearful. He said, "Why do you have little faith?" Clearly those men didn't understand who Jesus is at that point. You know, we often talk about not living in fear, but that's a lot of times easier said than done. I'll admit there's times when I let things get to me. Sometimes they're minor. It's not unusual. For example, Stephanie and I were talking about this the other day when we were coming home from church. We're traveling to our home in Lawrenceburg from Macville Christian Church. It's about a 35-mile drive. And there are times that I wonder if we're going to make it, because almost every time I drive Highway 433, someone driving much faster than I think they will meet me on a curve, and they're crossing that center line, or at least hugging it very close, usually crossing it. And I'll admit, I don't like it. During tornado season, I don't look forward to tornado season, because I'm old enough that I vividly remember the outbreak of April 3rd, 1974, and if you don't know much about that, do a Google search. It will open your eyes. That tornado missed my family's farm by a couple of miles, but I can tell you, I just assumed not go through it again. Just this week, there were flood watches out for Anderson County, where I live. We have a creek in our backyard. There's flood watch here. There's flood watch out for Washington County, where Macville Christian Church is located. In many areas, many of the streets were flooded in Louisville. The point I'm trying to make is that even though God is omnipotent, He's never promised to protect us from all the weather-related catastrophes that we experience. You know, last year when Hurricane Helene hit western North Carolina, some of the buildings that were demolished were churches. And we need to understand also that God never promised to completely protect us from the evil that lurks in this world, in this life. We hear more and more about church shootings. And last month, many were shocked when the conservative commentator Charlie Kirk was murdered. There are people that can harm us physically, yes, but God promises to never leave us. In other words, our eternal salvation can't be taken from us by those who hate the truth of God's Word. Remember what Jesus said in Matthew chapter 10, starting in verse 29. He said, "Are not two sparrows sold for a penny, and not one of them will fall to the ground apart from your Father? But even the hairs of your head are all numbered. Fear not, therefore you are of more value than many sparrows." And remember what the writer of Hebrews said in Hebrews 13, verses 5 and 6. "Keep your life free from love of money and be content with what you have. For he has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you." So we can confidently say, "The Lord is my helper. I will not fear. What can man do to me?" You know, it can be easy to wonder if God still cares when we have physical or emotional pain. We can have sickness, and it can be easy to wonder the same. But I think we need to remember those words of Paul in Philippians chapter 1, verses 19 to 21. Actually, the last phrase of verse 18 starts this. He says, "Yes, and I will rejoice. For I know that through your prayers and the help of the Spirit of Jesus Christ, this will turn out for my deliverance. As is my eager expectation and hope, that I will not be at all ashamed, but that with full courage, now as always, Christ will be honored in my body, whether by life or by death. For to me, to live is Christ, and to die is gain." In other words, he knows that in either way, his relationship with God is solid and he's going to live forever. I pray that we all develop that same kind of faith and that same kind of trust in Jesus. That regardless of what happened, we know we have our salvation intact. And that God won't leave us. I'll see you Sunday at Macville Christian Church. Have a great week and see you then. Bye-bye.